Diane is going to give you some tips on how to get noticed, what to propose, what not to propose, how to approach the whole concept of media coverage. And I think it'll be some really great information for you. So take some notes. And if you don't have pen and paper right now, remember that we're going to put this up on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to hear some more information or hear it again.
All right. So thanks, Nancy. And thanks, Stephanie. I put together a tip sheet. So if anybody's interested in having that afterwards, I'm happy to send it to you. But let's talk about how to get media coverage during a crisis like this one. So for starters, let me tell you that I've been a reporter pretty much since I popped out of the womb, but as most of you who know me know, but I've been doing reporting as for a living for a long time. I've been a journalist for a long, long time, about 30 years. And I've been with newspapers, magazines, you name it. So some of this comes from the receiving side. I know how I like to receive news tips, and there are some people out there who are really, really good at doing this. So some of this information comes from that experience of me hearing from them. And then other things are things that I've read over the years and started compiling. And I couldn't put all of the tips in just a one-page double-sided sheet for you, but I wanted to kind of hit the highlights with you today. So let's start off first. Number one, what is your big headline? What is it that you're trying to convey? News editors are going to want to know why they should cover your story, and just as importantly, why now? So what is it that you're proposing they cover? You know, just because you are a cool person with a cool business, that doesn't mean that they should drop everything and come and cover that. So what is it that you're trying to convey? And I say, what is the big headline? So what is the thing that you are trying to get through? So I want to keep in mind that even during good times, editors and reporters are really busy. So your pitch has to have some kind of immediacy to it. And in the suggestions, I say, is there something your company is doing to help people through this particular crisis? You know, and I know that Emily has her company. She's not on video right now, but her company has shifted, and they went from doing what they've been typically doing to now making masks. And there are some other people who, Lourdes McKeague has done the same kind of thing. She's one of our members. So why should they cover you now? What is it that you're doing? You have to also kind of say what it is that is different about your company or your thing that you're making. So let's use the masks as an example. If you're making masks, they're not necessarily the kind that would be used at the hospital, but they could be used over top of the hospital masks, and then they can be rewashed. They can be washed and reused, or they're made of a certain kind of material that rejects germs, or something that the media would want to hear. The second point I want you to consider is how your story can be told. So, you hear about press releases all the time, and it's not absolutely essential that you have a press release. You need to convey to the writers, the reporters, the editors, whoever you're approaching, what it is you're trying to pitch. It's easier for them if you do have a press release, because then they can get all of the information. And remember, you've heard who, what, when, where, how, in addition to that why that we just mentioned. So that's a good way for them to get those relevant details. I'm reading a little bit here, so my eyes are shifting back and forth. The release should contain some very specific things, and there are all kinds of things. You can look at press releases on, just look up press release on the web, and you can see other people's press releases, or you can see how to do a press release. And they're all pretty standard. You want your company letterhead if you can, and you can create that just by making a logo, putting your logo on top of a blank Word document, and then putting the right information. Maybe at the bottom you can put your company contact information. But the who, what, when, where, and how of your story. that way and it should also contain some kind of like a call to action of how people can reach you. So let's use the mask example again. You're making these masks, they're available on this particular website, and for pricing or that kind of thing, people can contact whatever. So that's the number 2 thing. Number 3, where should your story be told? Are you pitching it to the local newspaper? Are you pitching it to the local business journal or a TV station or radio station? Which medium is going to be the best for your particular pitch? It also might be that you're pitching to an online, a blog or an online magazine. So do some homework there and figure out where you'd like to see your story appear. And it depends too, if it's a local, if it's an international or national, what do you read and where do your customers show up? One of the suggestions I had is to also be aware of the deadlines of the media you're pitching. So you don't want to necessarily pitch something that's for the 6 o'clock news at 5:30 because they're working all day to put that together. So, if you want to be on the noon news or the 6 o'clock news, you're going to have to pitch it pretty early in the day so that they can get everything together and figure out how to get a camera crew and those kinds of things. The next thing we want to consider is who should tell your story. So if you can identify a specific journalist or a team of journalists, that will make it actually easier. That way you're not just plopping it in the editor's lap and letting the editor decide who to send it out to. So one of the tips I have is that if you can find something else that person wrote or covered on TV or covered in a blog or that kind of thing recently, send an email and say, I read or saw your recent report on fill in the blank, and I thought that this would make a good follow-up story to that. Then let's look at how your story can be presented. So television stations are looking for good visuals to go along with whatever they cover. So newspapers and magazines, they're also looking for visuals, and those kinds of visuals are very different. So TVs will be wanting video. You don't have to send them video, but if you send them pictures and say, here are the pieces of things let's use the masks as an example. Here's a picture of the masks I'm creating. So then they have that in their head. They understand, okay, this is what they look like. They do look valid. Here's a picture of my assembly line making these things. Those kinds of things, the visuals are really, really important. And even if they're just snapped on your phone and you've sent them along, you can say, I realize these aren't, for your publication, but I thought you might want to see. Then how can your story be pitched? That's the next question. Once you have the materials together and you know who you're approaching, the way I like to receive the pitches is in a conversational email. So this is not something real formal, dear madam or sir. People just send things and they say, hey, Diane, I think I have a good story for you. Here's something that I'm working on. I think it's important right now because, and I've enclosed a press release to give you the details, but in general, here's what you need to know. And then I've also enclosed some photographs for you so you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm available all day or all this week and anytime. And here's my cell phone number. Please give me a call. This can come from your PR person, your marketing person. It can come from you as the CEO. It doesn't really matter so much who it comes from as what it is that you're pitching and approaching. But I say, please make the emails brief. Make that kind of brief so they don't have to read through 6 or 7 or 8 paragraphs. Just a conversational, brief pitch, and then don't make it complicated. Don't put all the details in there and then have them again in the press release. Just give the highlight, this is something I thought you might be interested in, here's why, and then enclose the press release. And then here's the last point I want to make, and this is really, really key, is how can you follow up? This is so key. People are super busy, especially during a crisis. All of these media people, they have so many things to do, so many things to cover. So you don't want to be a pain. You don't want to keep nudging them. And under no circumstances do you want to nag them and say, well, I sent you an email 2 days ago and you haven't responded, and how rude is that? Or, don't say anything about them being rude, because it's probably not all about you. They might have somebody at home who's sick. They might have 12 stories they have to do in a 12-hour period. You have no idea why they're not responding. It might not be because you're sending them junk, or it could be. So you want to make sure that you don't take it personally. And one of the things I've found is really effective is to send a follow-up, add some more information. So say, hey, by the way, we've been making these things, but now we're also making this. We've added this to our assembly line. Or since I emailed you and sent you the press releases, we've sold 2,000 of these things already, and that shows that there's a real need for it in the community. Or since I wrote you last, we have partnered with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and now this is something that we're doing. So add some information, and then say, for your convenience, I've attached the press release again, and I just wanted to share this great news with you, and I hope you're having a great day. Leave it at that, keep it real positive, and that makes you somebody that they want to hear from, because now they're getting good news, and they're happy when they hear from you, instead of, why didn't you respond to my press release on Tuesday? So those were my tips. I'm sure you guys have questions. So I'm going to open it up and see if there's anyone in the chat who has a question.
So while you do that, Diane, let me ask you, what's the best way to build a relationship before a crisis?
That's a really, really good point. Again, conversational. So send reporters once in a while, just send a note saying, hey, I really like that article you wrote on such and such, or the TV story you did on such and such. I'm in a similar business, and I know that that this was a really good story, and you did a good thing for the community. Try to find a way to talk to them about something that's important to them, that's real. And people don't know this, but most of the time reporters don't hear anything at all from the public. And that's a good thing, because they know that no news is good news. They only hear if they have a mistake, which if most reporters don't make mistakes, that many. And or if it's something that is so incendiary, that's something that just made people angry or whatever, then they'll hear from them. But if you can just share, good news and say, hey, great job on that, that helps you develop a relationship long before it's needed. And people really do like to hear from you, even if they don't respond and say thank you. You've put that out there, and you just keep trying. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've had some really good PR people over the years approach me, and there was one who I come to think of her every time I think of a really good PR person. Every single time she sent me an idea, it was always a really good idea, and I almost always picked up these stories. Mm-hmm. And they were not always about her company or the company she worked for, which I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. She would send me a news tip and say, hey, Diane, I know that this doesn't have anything to do with me, but I just saw that this was happening in the community, and I thought you might be interested because you cover this topic so well. Mm-hmm. And I looked up and I found out who to contact, and good luck on that. Wow, she was helping me with my job. So I always looked forward to getting her emails, because I knew that whatever I got from her was going to be meaty and important. So mm-hmm. Guess what? She works for the mayor now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What topic did you cover typically?
I covered the workplace beat at the Orlando Sentinel. I covered all of West Orange. So anything that is in Orange County, that's west of the city of Orlando. So that's all kinds of coverage area. I covered the legislature, Florida legislature for a brief time. And then for Florida Trend magazine, I covered tourism, healthcare, and all of Central Florida, any Central Florida business. So
Wow.
yeah, and no matter, you know, throughout my reporting, she was always sending me stuff. So yeah.
Diane, I have a question. Can you give some tips for putting together an effective press release?
I can. So you know, it's a good question because you're gonna read, keep it to one page. It should only be one page on the front and all that stuff. And that's just like telling you to keep your resume to one page. That cannot always be done. Let's say you're doing something and you have 3 owners that you know you want to quote or that kind of thing. You're not going to be able to get that on one page. So throw that out the window. But I would try to do at least one page front and back. You know, you don't want your press release to be a whole book or a whole article. So that's one thing. Try to put it in the same format that you see online that others are using. And the reason I say that is because people like me, you know, reporters, you get used to seeing this format. And if somebody presents it in a different format, your mind gets all juggled around. Well, how do I read this now? Instead of looking at the topic, you're looking at the formatting, and that completely distracts you. So so try to keep it in that same format. That way the format becomes invisible and the content bubbles to the surface. The other thing is, you know, a couple years ago, there was a movement to try to get press releases to be only bullet points. So they didn't have like a beginning paragraph and paragraphs in between and quotes and all that. They were just bullet points. And that made me really uncomfortable as a journalist because I want to read like a whole sentence. And I think that one of the dangers of that, or not dangers, but one of the negatives of that is that there are some smaller media out there that will take your press release and run it as an actual article. So it doesn't have a byline, but it might be in like a community newspaper or, you know, right on social media kind of thing. And so if it's written in bullet points, it's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So help the reporter by putting it, you know, in a format that can be used.
So Diane, have you ever been invited to small businesses to get to know people? Like if they're celebrating a milestone anniversary, have you as a reporter been invited? And do you think that's a good idea?
I'm invited all the time. I mean, like every week. And then, gosh, right before COVID hit, I was invited to 2 restaurant openings and they both sounded yummy, but you can't possibly go to all of them. And so I don't always go to those kinds of things. I try to go to, if it's like a nonprofit, you know, I'll do that. I went to something with the Literacy League locally. But there are so many of those to cover. It would have to be something really different to attract a reporter to go there. What I do like is when I see like a Chamber of Commerce type of thing, even if it's like a business after hours or whatever, and you can see all kinds of, like I'll go to almost every expo, you know, then you can see all the businesses there together. I'll go to things like that. And, you know, you don't want to necessarily be showing favoritism by just going to one or the other. That's the problem. Yeah.
Okay, great. So Steph or anybody, did you see any questions, any other questions that Diane should address?
Yeah, there was one here and oh gosh, her name has disappeared. She's asking, is there, you said in the email, keep it conversational, no PR format, but from an ease of visualizing, is there a good model? I think she's talking about for emails.
Oh, for Jacqueline, is that for, so the email conversational, is there a visualization? You know, email is just the way you would email one of your friends. Just make sure everything is spelled correctly for a pitch. Yeah, excuse me. It's just you're just making sure that you, for goodness, first thing, spell the reporter's name right. You know, and you can use the person's first name. You don't have to say Miss Sears or Mrs. You know, whatever. You can just say, you know, hey Diane. And I don't think that's disrespectful. But yeah, no, just a conversational email. The press release has to be formatted in a very certain way, but the email should be just conversational. You know, try not to do it with lots of little smiley faces and that kind of thing. You know, make it professional the way you would to, you know, back when you worked for corporate, if you did, you know, the way you would email your boss or something like that. Spell everything correctly, read it 3 times before you send it out, you know, and just make sure it sounds intelligent. So yeah, I remember getting one, something from a very young person a long time ago, and she just said, "You rock." And I thought, oh, I think she was asking me to look at her resume or something. Well, now we say that all the time, but back then it wasn't cool yet. And I thought that was a little inappropriate, but you know what? She was ahead of her time.
Beautiful. All right. And thank you so much, Diane, for your mini workshop on getting a journalist's attention. So thank you very much for participating, and we wish to see you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye.